The notification lit up my phone screen like an accusation. Joint account balance, $47,232.18, down from $198,000 just yesterday. My fingers trembled as I checked the transaction history. A single withdrawal of $150,000 marked funeral expenses, Thompson family. I'm Kiara, and until this moment, I thought I understood the meaning of family loyalty. The screen blurred as I scrolled through the details, again and again, willing the numbers to change. "Mark?" I called out, my voice echoing through our modern downtown loft. "Mark, get in here now." The sound of his footsteps from his home office seemed deliberately slow. He appeared in the doorway, beer bottle in hand, wearing that infuriating expression of practiced innocence I'd grown to recognize over our 12 years together. "Did you authorize a withdrawal of $150,000 from our joint account?" He took a long pull from his bottle. "Dad's funeral arrangements needed to be handled. Bethany's taking care of it." Bethany. The name tasted bitter in my mouth. "Your sister who declared bankruptcy last year? That Bethany. She knows what Mom wants. She's good at organizing these things." I pulled up our bank's website on my laptop, turning the screen toward him. "Show me the invoices, the funeral home's details, anything." "Jesus, Kiara, my father just died. Can we not do this now?" "Your father died 3 weeks ago. The memorial service was modest. I was there, remember. So explain to me why your sister needed 6 figures for funeral expenses today." Mark's jaw tightened. He set his beer down with deliberate care on our glass coffee table. No coaster. Another small act of defiance. "You don't understand how these things work in established families," he said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought I was being difficult. "There are obligations, traditions. Traditions like emptying joint accounts without discussing it with your spouse. The money's going to good use. Mom needs— Helen lives in a fully paid-off house with a generous pension and life insurance payout. Try again." His phone buzzed. I caught Bethany's name on the screen before he quickly turned it face down. The gesture told me everything I needed to know. "You know what? Don't bother explaining." I closed my laptop with a snap. "I'll call the bank myself." "Don't." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. "You'll just upset Mom. She's been through enough." I looked down at his fingers, pressed against my skin, then back at his face. "Let go of me." He released me immediately, running his hand through his hair instead. "Look, I know how this seems, but Bethany has a plan. The money's an investment." "An investment," I laughed, and the sound was ugly, even to my own ears. "Like her juice bar franchise, or that cryptocurrency scheme last summer. This is different. She's found a real opportunity." "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. You know what the real investment was, the one I made thinking you and I were partners, that we made decisions together. That's the one I'm worried about right now." His phone buzzed again, and again. He glanced at it nervously. "I need to take this." "Of course you do." I stood up, gathering my things. "Tell Bethany I said hi, and that fraud looks terrible on a resume." "Where are you going?" "To see my lawyer, then my accountant. Then maybe I'll stop by and have a chat with Helen about these mysterious funeral expenses." I paused at the door. "You know what the worst part is, Mark? I actually thought you were different from them." His phone kept buzzing as I walked out. I didn't look back to see if he answered it. Some calls you just have to let go to voicemail. Helen's dining room felt like a museum of passive-aggressive warfare. Crystal glasses clinked too loudly, silverware scraped against plates with deliberate precision, and Bethany's new diamond tennis bracelet caught the light every time she reached for her wine. "The market's been absolutely brutal lately," Bethany said, cutting into her filet mignon. "But some of us know how to spot real opportunities, right, Mark?" I stabbed my fork into a roasted potato. 3 days since the money vanished, and here we sat, playing happy family, while my lawyer's voicemails went unanswered. "Speaking of opportunities," Helen chimed in, "Bethany's been telling me about this wonderful investment she's found. Something about luxury condos in Miami?" My wine glass froze halfway to my lips. Luxury condos, that's what the funeral expenses are funding. Mark's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing hard. A warning. Oh, darling, Bethany laughed, that practice society laugh she'd perfected. You're still hung up on that. The money's already tripled. I could show you the projections. Show me the bank statements instead. The room went silent. Helen's fork clattered against her plate. Kiara, Mark muttered. Not now. When then? When the money's gone? When she's moved on to the next scheme? I turned to Helen. Did you know about this? Did you approve using your husband's funeral to fund your daughter's real estate gambling? Helen dabbed her lips with her napkin, hands trembling slightly. Bethany has always had excellent business sense, just like her father. Her father built a legitimate company from the ground up. She builds pyramid schemes and maxes out credit cards. That's enough. Mark's voice cut through the tension. You're upset about the money, I get it, but this isn't the time or place. When is it ever? I pushed back from the table. Your father's been dead 3 weeks, and she's already using his memory to fund her next disaster. But I'm the one being inappropriate. Bethany set down her wine glass with exaggerated care. Some of us understand family loyalty, Kiara. Some of us weren't raised by wolves in a trading pit. Better wolves than vultures. Girls, please. Helen pleaded. We're all grieving. We shouldn't. Grieving. I laughed. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like business as usual. Bethany needs money. Mark enables her, and you pretend everything's fine while she bleeds us all dry. That's not fair, Mark started, but I cut him off. What's not fair is finding out my husband gave away our savings without even discussing it. What's not fair is watching your sister parade around in new jewelry while claiming she needs funeral expenses. What's not fair is I stopped, something clicking into place. The bracelet. When did you get it, Bethany? She touched it reflexively. What? The tennis bracelet. It's new. When did you buy it? I don't see how that's any of your... Yesterday, I pressed. After the bank transfer, maybe? The flush creeping up her neck told me everything. Kiara, Mark's voice held a warning. Don't. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. I want the money back by Monday, all of it, or I'm going to the police. You wouldn't dare, Bethany hissed. We're family. No, we're not. We're just people stuck in the same dysfunction. And I'm done playing along. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Helen's soft sobs, Bethany's angry whispers, and Mark's footsteps following me. Wait, he called as I reached my car. Please, we can figure this out. I turned to face him, suddenly tired. Can we? Because from where I stand, you've already chosen your side, and it's not with me. That's not true. I love you. Love isn't enough when there's no trust left. I got into my car, rolling down the window for one last word. Tell your sister she has until Monday. After that, family loyalty won't matter anymore. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Bethany in the doorway, her diamond bracelet glinting like a promise of war to come. Some people say blood is thicker than water. They forget the rest of the saying. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And I was done drowning in either. The email from Bethany's former assistant arrived at 3 a.m., but I didn't see it until morning. Subject line: What you should know about the Thompson Family Trust. I sat in my parked car outside Lucas's investment firm, reading through the attached documents for the 4th time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. You look like hell, Lucas said, sliding into the passenger seat. No offense. Read this. I handed him my phone. Bethany's been doing this for years. The funeral expenses, that's just the latest scam. Lucas scrolled through the documents, his expression darkening. Shell companies, fake invoices. She's been bleeding your father-in-law's business since before he died. And Helen knew. She had to have known. The betrayal tasted like copper in my mouth. She's been signing off on these consulting fees for 3 years. What about Mark? That's what I need to find out. I started the car. Want to crash a brewery board meeting? The drive to Mark's Craft Brewery took 15 minutes. 15 minutes to rehearse what I'd say, how I'd handle his inevitable denials. But nothing prepared me for walking into his office and finding Bethany there, seated behind his desk like she owned it. "Well," she smiled, "this is awkward." Mark stood by the window, hands in his pockets. "Kiara, you can't just barge in here." "Actually, I can." I dropped the printed emails on the desk. "As a major investor in this brewery, I have every right to ask why you're paying consulting fees to a shell company owned by your sister." Bethany's smile didn't waver. "I provide valuable services." "Like what?" "Embezzlement advice, tips on how to forge signatures." "That's enough," Mark snapped. "You're making accusations without understanding." "I understand perfectly." I turned to face him. "Your father built this brewery from nothing. He trusted you to run it, to protect it. Instead, you're letting her drain it dry, just like she's done with everything else." "The brewery needed capital," Bethany cut in. "Dad was too traditional, too cautious. I found investors." "You found loan sharks," I corrected. "I've seen the contracts. How much do you owe them now? $500,000? More?" Mark's face went pale. "What loans?" Finally, a crack in Bethany's facade. "Mark, don't listen to her. She's trying to turn you against me." "The money from our account," I pressed on. "It wasn't for funeral expenses or Miami condos, was it? It was to cover the interest payments you couldn't make." "Is that true?" Mark's voice was barely a whisper. Bethany stood up, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Everything I did for this family. To protect our legacy." "By stealing from it?" I laughed. "Some legacy. Get out." Her voice turned to ice. "Both of you, this is my office now." "Your office?" Mark stepped forward. "Since when?" "Since Dad signed over his controlling shares to me last month." She pulled out a document from the desk drawer. "Check the date, it's all legal." I grabbed the paper before Mark could reach it. The signature at the bottom made my stomach turn. "This is dated 3 days after he went into the coma." The silence in the room was deafening. "You forged it," Mark said slowly. "You forged our father's signature while he was dying." "I did what needed to be done." Bethany's mask finally cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. The loans were coming due. The investors were threatening to go public. I had to protect us. "Us?" I stepped closer to her. "Or yourself." She reached for her phone. "Security will escort you out." "No need." I headed for the door, then turned back to Mark. "Your father trusted you with his life's work. What would he say if he could see you now?" "Kiara, wait. Monday's deadline still stands." I cut him off. "But now it's not just our money I want back. It's everything she's stolen, every penny." "Or what?" Bethany called after me. I paused in the doorway. "Or I send these documents to the FBI. Your choice." The last thing I saw was Mark sinking into a chair, head in his hands, while Bethany frantically dialed her phone. "Some fires you light just to watch them burn. Others, you light to clear the ground for something new to grow." The hotel bar was empty, except for Lucas and me, sharing a bottle of overpriced Cabernet at 2 in the afternoon. My overnight bag sat at my feet, a silent admission that I couldn't go home. "Not yet." "You should see the texts he's sending," I said, sliding my phone across the bar, like I'm the one destroying his family. Lucas scrolled through the messages, his jaw tightening. "He's scared. Men like Mark, they're used to managing problems with money or charm. When that doesn't work, they lash out." I took another sip. "Did I tell you Helen called? Said I was being cruel, that family matters should stay private." As if privacy is what they're really worried about. Speaking of privacy, Lucas pulled out his tablet, opening his email. "Remember that audit I ran on the brewery's financials? It gets worse." The spreadsheet he showed me made my hands go cold. "These transfer dates, they match your father-in-law's hospital stays. Every time he was admitted, money moved through Bethany's shell companies." Lucas's voice was gentle. "They were counting on him dying, Kiara. They needed him to die." The wine turned sour in my mouth. Mark knew. He had to have known. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a new message from Mark. Coming home tonight? We need to talk. Don't, Lucas warned, reading over my shoulder. Whatever explanation he has, it's not worth. My phone rang. Mark's face appeared on the screen. Put it on speaker, Lucas said. I answered. What do you want, Mark? Where are you? His voice was strained. I went by your office, but they said you haven't been in all day. I'm safe. That's all you need to know. Kiara, please. Bethany explained everything. The loans, the transfers. It wasn't what you think. Dad knew about most of it. He approved. While he was in a coma? The words felt like glass in my throat. Did he approve that too? Silence stretched between us. That's what I thought. I finished my wine. How long did you wait? After they put him on the ventilator, how long before Bethany forged his signature? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You needed him gone to cover the embezzlement, the loans, everything. My voice didn't shake anymore. Tell me I'm wrong. Another silence, then softer. Come home, we can fix this. Fix what? The fraud? The theft? Or the fact that you watched your sister steal your father's company while he was dying? I did it for us, he said. The brewery was failing. The debts. Don't you dare make this about us. The rage finally broke through. You did it for yourself, because you were too weak to stand up to Bethany, too afraid to admit you'd failed at running the business your father built. That's not fair. Neither was stealing my money to pay off your loan sharks. Neither was lying to me for 3 years about where the brewery's profits were going. I caught Lucas's warning look and took a breath. You have until Monday. After that, everything goes to the FBI. You'd really do that? Destroy your own family? You're not my family anymore. You're just the man who helped his sister rob his dying father. I hung up before he could respond. The phone immediately lit up with texts. Please, we can work this out. Don't throw away 12 years. Lucas touched my arm. You okay? No. I stood up, grabbing my bag. But I will be. Can I crash at your place tonight? Guest room's already made up. He signed the bar tab. What's your next move? I deleted Mark's messages without reading them. First, I call my lawyer. Then I start documenting everything. The transfers, the forged signatures, the shell companies. And then I burn it all down. I headed for the door, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Sometimes the only way to save something is to destroy it first. Behind me, my phone kept buzzing with Mark's desperate attempts to maintain control. But some calls don't deserve an answer. Some betrayals run too deep for forgiveness. And some fires need to burn until there's nothing left but truth in the ashes. The cafe where Mark suggested we meet was neutral territory, halfway between his family's world and mine. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a coffee gone cold. His brewery's financial records spread across the table like a confession. You look tired, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Haven't slept much. He pushed a document toward me. This is everything. The loans, the transfers, all of it. You were right about Bethany. I didn't touch the papers. Why now? Because you deserve the truth. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. And because she's threatening to sell the brewery. Of course. It wasn't conscience that brought him here. It was desperation. She can't sell what she stole, I said. Those documents you showed me last week? The ones with your father's forged signature, they're worthless. Try telling that to her buyers. He leaned forward. They're coming tomorrow to finalize the deal. Once they take over, they'll discover the fraud and come after everyone involved. I smiled without humor, including you. His phone buzzed. Bethany's face flashed on the screen. He declined the call. Help me fix this, he said. Please, for us, don't. I held up my hand. There is no us anymore. There's just me trying to recover my money and you trying to save yourself. That's not fair. Neither was watching your father die while Bethany emptied his accounts. I stood up. You had choices, Mark. Every step of the way, you chose her. What do you want from me? His voice cracked. I'll sign whatever you want. Transfer the brewery shares back. Just tell me how to make this right. Another call from Bethany. This time, I grabbed his phone before he could decline it. Hello, Bethany, I answered. Perfect timing. We were just discussing your buyers. Put Mark on, she snapped. No, I don't think I will. Instead, let's talk about Monday's deadline. I caught Mark's panicked look, still planning to ignore it. You're bluffing. You won't go to the FBI. It would destroy Mark too. Try me. I pulled out my own phone, showing Mark the email draft to the Financial Crimes Unit. His face went ash white. I've got nothing left to lose. Wait, Mark grabbed my wrist. Just wait, please. I yanked my arm away. You have until tomorrow morning. Either transfer back every penny you stole, from me, from your father, from the brewery, or I send this email. You crazy bitch, Bethany hissed. You'd really destroy your own husband. Ex-husband, I corrected. The divorce papers are already filed. Funny how fraud and theft can speed up the process. Mark's head snapped up. What? Check your email. I gathered my things. You've been served. Kiara, don't do this. Tomorrow morning, I cut him off. And Mark, choose carefully this time. Family loyalty won't look good in a prison jumpsuit. I left him there, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal. Bethany's threats still echoing from the phone. Outside, Lucas was waiting in his car. How'd it go? About as expected. I buckled my seatbelt. He'll cave. He always does when Bethany pushes hard enough. And if he doesn't, my phone chimed with a new message from Helen. Please come to the house. There's something you need to know. Then we moved to Plan B. I showed Lucas the message. Want to bet she's finally ready to talk about those hospital transfers. Be careful, he warned. They're cornered animals now. Good. I typed a quick reply to Helen. That's exactly where I want them. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Mark through the cafe window, still staring at the divorce papers. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it needs to burn hot enough to cauterize the wounds it leaves behind. Tomorrow morning couldn't come soon enough. Helen's house felt smaller now, its shadows longer. The family photos lining the hallway watched me like judges as I followed her into the study. Bethany was already there, perched on the leather sofa like a queen on her throne. No Mark in sight. I'm glad you came, Helen said, closing the door behind us. We need to talk about your accusations. They're not accusations when I have proof. I remained standing, keeping both of them in view. Where's Mark? He won't be joining us. Bethany's smile was razor sharp. But we have something you might want to see. She slid a folder across the coffee table. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Me and Lucas, at the hotel bar, outside his apartment, in his car. What's this supposed to be? Insurance. Helen's voice was soft, disappointed. Against your rash decisions. You're having me followed. We're protecting our family. Bethany leaned forward. How do you think it'll look to the FBI when they learn you've been conspiring with a rival investor, one who stands to gain from the brewery's collapse? The air left my lungs. Lucas has nothing to do with this. No? Helen picked up one of the photos. His firm's been trying to acquire the brewery for years. And now, suddenly, you're staying at his place, sharing confidential documents. That's not. We spoke to your lawyer this morning, Bethany cut in. Apparently, he's very concerned about your mental state, the stress of the divorce, your obsession with these conspiracy theories about the family. My hands started shaking. You can't possibly think anyone will believe. They'll believe whatever we tell them. Helen's eyes were wet with tears that might even have been genuine. We're trying to help you, dear. Before you destroy yourself. By threatening me. By offering you a way out. Bethany produced another document. Sign over your shares in the brewery. Drop these ridiculous allegations, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. And if I don't, then we'll have no choice but to report your industrial espionage to the authorities. She shrugged. I'm sure Lucas will understand. Prison sentences for corporate fraud are quite reasonable these days. The room spun slightly. You'd frame him to protect yourself? We'd do whatever necessary to protect this family. Helen touched my arm. Please, Kiara, don't force our hand. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Where are you? Something's wrong. Mark just showed up at my office. Tick-tock, Bethany sang. What's it going to be? I looked at the photos again, at the careful documentation of every meeting, every conversation. They'd planned this from the start, turning my own investigation against me. I'll need time to think. You have an hour. Bethany stood, smoothing her designer dress. Oh, and don't bother warning Lucas. My lawyer's already meeting with him now. Helen pressed the contract into my hands. We really did love you like a daughter. Remember that. I walked out into the fading daylight, the papers heavy in my bag. My phone kept buzzing. Lucas trying to reach me. Mark's messages piling up. My lawyer's warnings about concerning developments. In the car, I finally let myself break. One sob escaped, then another, until I could barely breathe. They'd taken everything. My marriage, my money, my reputation. And now they were going to take the one person who'd stood by me through it all. My phone lit up with a final message from Lucas. They're saying you used me to steal company secrets. What's going on? I started the car, hands steady now despite everything. Helen was right about one thing. They were family. And family knew all your weaknesses, all your pressure points, all the ways to make you bleed. But they'd forgotten something crucial. They'd taught me how to play this game, and I'd learned from the best. I pulled away from Helen's house, leaving the contract unsigned in her mailbox. Sometimes, when you're backed into a corner, the only way out is through. And I was done playing defense. Time to show them what real betrayal looked like. The brewery's annual shareholders meeting wasn't meant to be a battleground, but I'd learned that battlegrounds rarely announce themselves in advance. I sat in the back, watching Bethany command the room with practiced charm, Mark hovering at her side like a nervous shadow. And despite recent challenges, she was saying, "Our acquisition deal will ensure the brewery's legacy continues under proper management." My laptop connected to the projector with a soft beep, right on schedule. Before we vote on the sale, I stood up. There are some documents the shareholders should review. Bethany's smile flickered. We've already distributed all relevant materials. Not these. I clicked the first slide. Bank statements filled the screen. Transactions highlighted in angry red. These show where the money really went during Robert Thompson's final months. The room erupted in whispers. Mark stepped forward, but Helen grabbed his arm. "This is hardly the time," Bethany started. "It's exactly the time." I advanced to the next slide. While Robert Thompson lay dying, over $2 million was siphoned through shell companies, companies registered to Bethany Thompson. "These documents are clearly fabricated," Helen called out, but her voice shook. "They're verified by 3 independent auditors." I met Bethany's gaze. "And by your former assistant, the one you fired last month." She kept copies of everything. Bethany's composure cracked. "Mark, do something." But Mark was staring at the screen, at his father's forged signature, dated 3 days after the coma began. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "When Dad was in the hospital, did you already have this planned?" "I did what I had to do." Bethany's voice turned hard. "The brewery was failing. You were too weak to save it, so you killed him." The words exploded from Mark. The stress of those unauthorized loans, the constant pressure about changing his will. You knew his heart couldn't take it. The shareholders were on their feet now, phones recording everything. Helen had sunk into her chair, face ashen. "You don't understand," Bethany snarled. "None of you do. I built this deal. I found the buyers. Everything I did was to protect us." "To protect yourself," I corrected, clicking to the final slide. "But you made one mistake. You got sloppy with the paperwork." The screen showed a single email, dated the day before Robert Thompson's death. From Bethany to her lawyer, "Make sure the DNR order is in place before we move the money. We can't risk him waking up." The room went silent. Mark stumbled back like he'd been hit. "A DNR? Dad never wanted. I can explain. Bethany reached for him, but he recoiled. Don't touch me. He turned to the shareholders. As acting CEO, I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove Bethany Thompson from all positions within the company, pending criminal investigation. You can't. Bethany spun toward Helen. Mother, tell them I did this for us. But Helen was already walking out, her shoulders bowed with the weight of too many willful blindnesses. The police are waiting outside, I said quietly, along with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Your choice, how this ends. Bethany's laugh was brittle. You really think you've won? That destroying this family makes you better than me? No. I packed up my laptop. It just makes me different. I learned that from you. The doors burst open as federal agents entered. I didn't stay to watch them lead Bethany away or to see Mark's attempt at an apology. Some victories feel too much like funerals to celebrate. Outside, Lucas was waiting by his car. You okay? He asked. No. I watched through the window as Bethany was handcuffed, still screaming about family loyalty. But I will be. What now? I handed him a folder. My resignation from the brewery's board, effective immediately. Now we rebuild, just not here. As we drove away, my phone lit up with Mark's call. I declined it, watching the brewery shrink in the rearview mirror. Some debts can never be repaid, and some bridges need to burn, so you can't be tempted to cross back over them. It was time to find new ground to stand on. The last box from my office at the brewery sat unopened on my new apartment's kitchen counter. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds, so different from the suburban view I'd shared with Mark. My phone buzzed, Helen's name on the screen. The sentencing is tomorrow, she said when I answered. No hello, no pleasantries. Bethany asked for you. I'm not going. She wants to apologize. I traced the edge of the cardboard box, feeling the sharp corner under my finger. Does she want to apologize, or does she want to explain? Helen's silence was answer enough. How's Mark handling it? He's a heavy pause. The brewery's doing better. New management team. He talks about you sometimes. Don't. I opened the box finally, finding my old family photos nested between financial reports. We both know why it ended. People can change, Kiara. He has changed. Maybe, but I'm not interested in verification. I pulled out a frame, my first day at the brewery, Mark's arm around my waist, both of us smiling. Goodbye, Helen. I set the photo face down as Lucas knocked on my door, right on time with dinner. Thai food and final paperwork, he announced, setting the bags down. The investment group loved your proposal. They should. I learned from the best about how money really moves. I signed the documents without reading them again. I'd done enough due diligence to last a lifetime. You know, Lucas hesitated. The offer to join my firm still stands. After everything you uncovered, I need to build something of my own. I handed back the signed papers. Something clean. My phone lit up again. Mark this time. You should take it, Lucas said softly. Closure matters. I answered. Hello, Mark. I sold the house, he said. Thought you should know. The house we'd picked together, argued over, made our own. Okay. I found your old investment notebook in the study. The one with all your ideas for the brewery's expansion. His voice cracked slightly. You were right, about everything. Not everything. I looked at the unopened bottle of craft beer he'd given me on our first date, still sitting on my counter. I thought love was enough. Kiara, don't say you're sorry again. I picked up the bottle, feeling its weight. Just do better with whatever comes next. After we hung up, Lucas raised an eyebrow. You okay? Getting there. I handed him the beer bottle. Here, a relic from another life. You sure? Some things you keep, others you let go. My laptop chimed with a new email. Another investor interested in my startup. And some things you build from scratch. Lucas left after dinner, taking the signed papers and the old beer with him. I stood at my window, watching the city pulse with possibility. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Mark, Found this in the study. Thought you might want it back. The attached photo showed my old business card, the one from my first day at the brewery. I'd written on the back, "Dreams don't work unless you do." I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Some memories you keep, not as anchors to the past, but as markers of how far you've come. The city lights blurred slightly as I turned away from the window. On my counter, that last box from the brewery waited to be unpacked or discarded. Tomorrow, I'd decide which. Tonight, I had a new business plan to write, a new future to map out. My laptop screen glowed with opportunity. Startup seeks angel investors for ethical finance platform. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you. It's building something better from the ashes. I began to type, letting the past settle behind me like a closed book, while ahead, blank pages waited to be filled. The city hummed with promise, and this time I was writing my own story.